Hey, wake up. Yeah. Got my man Dave, got my man Dan. You know what time it is, and this is 2-6. Yeah. Ask us, we seatbelts, boy. You better strap up. Conversations is controversy. It's time to act up. Carolina ballistics, where the precision's wicked. Tune in and listen. It get deep if you dig it. No reason to act tough. Carolina ballistics training academy. Ain't no reason to act tough. So listen up.
Hey guys, this is Dan. Sign up for classes, buy merch at carolinaballisticsta.net. That's carolinaballisticsta.net. Yeah. What's up, everybody? This is your man, Daniel Irwin. Welcome back to Carolina Ballistics and Training Academy presents the Dan and Dave Show. Welcome back. I'm your host, Daniel Irwin. Our man of the hour, who's going to be guest hosting with us, is Mr. Sean Neville, and we got a special guest for you guys today. President of the Flat Earth Society himself, the one and only Mr. Mark Sargent, my main man. What's up, brother?
Hey guys, thank you very much for having me. And by the way, I am not okay, first off, I'm not president of anything, nor am I mayor or king. I consider myself a flat earth recruiter at
I
best.
love it.
Because I'm usually the guy you hear about before you get into flat earth. I'm like year one of flat earth, so I'm old school. However, the other thing is, like, we don't really have anything to do with the Flat Earth Society. We're really just Flat Earth 2.0. We're social media Flat Earth. Flat Earth Society was there a long time before us, and they weren't doing anything, so we had to kind of take over.
That is awesome. So, Mark, so you went a little bit about yourself. Would you mind giving us a little bit more of an introduction of what got you in this movement of flat earthers?
Sure. So I've been in probably longer than most people. So in 2014, summer of 2014, I had basically run out of conspiracies to look at. I was conspiracy bored. I was sitting there in the summer of 2014. It's like, what is there anything else to look? Kind of like what people are doing with Netflix now. It's like, is there anything coming from North Korea that I haven't seen? So I ran out of things to look at, and everybody knows, if you're into conspiracies at all, about flat Earth, it's terrible, it's horrible. Why would you ever look at it? It's ridiculous. So I thought, well, I'm not getting any younger, so I think I'll just tick this one off my bucket list, and I'll spend a weekend just knocking it out, because how hard could it be? And that weekend turned into weeks, which turned into months, and next thing you know, at the beginning of 2015, I had given up. I said, you know what? I'm going about this all wrong. So I woke up in the middle of the night and said, I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to tell the internet it's flat and see what happens. And so I made a series of videos called the Flat Earth Clues, and which was basically just a cry for help. Wow. And put all my contact information out there, which you're never ever supposed to do, ever. In fact, so here's my name, my real address, my phone number, everything you possibly about me. That's a great idea. This is absolutely what you want to do. And people started contacting me and saying, yeah, man, it's not nuts. Here's why. And that was 8 years ago. And now here we are, a whole bunch of stuff later. And it's been a heck of a ride.
Wow. I think the big question that a lot of people have when it comes to the flat earth movement, and the concept that the earth isn't round, that we're so constantly fed since we're children, is that who would actually benefit from the world being round, and how would anybody benefit from hiding the fact that the world is flat?
Right. And I have to apologize to your listeners in advance if they didn't know what the show was about coming in, because a lot of people are like, so is this in April? Is this April 1st? Is this a rerun or something? Because they're not actually talking about flat Earth, right?
Definitely.
But that kind of ties into your question, which is why would you hide something like that? And honestly, I don't think the powers that be wanted to hide it, which was, if it's not a globe, I've got a little globe right here. So it's not this, right? It's not this little spinning ball that's spinning around like that. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's something like a snow globe, a building. Right? Something looks like that. Then
Wow.
that's the one I use on press things. It was built especially for me by Chris Pontius, so that
Wow.
he goes, you need a small thing to hold in front of the camera whenever you're sitting down with people. It's like, okay, thank you. So if you're living in a snow globe, and they did the biggest problem was they didn't find out about it until about almost 1960, meaning that everything was almost done. The civilization had already been set up, and so the question isn't who benefits from hiding it. Think of it like this: if you're the powers that be, I don't care what name you want to put on them, the Illuminati, the Trilaterals, the Masons, the Vatican, whatever. If you're the powers that be, and you don't figure out until about 1960 that this is really what the world looks like, that you're living in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling like a snow globe,
Yeah.
do you tell people? No. No, you can't. The information is power, and is the most powerful pieces of information that's out there, which is it benefits you in that you have more to lose than you have to gain. Now, could there be money made? Sure, but they also gave away a whole bunch of money to keep this thing hidden. They burned through a lot of cash. So think of this way. Think of what could go wrong if you all of a sudden announce this to the world. Three parts. First part is academically. Every university in the world, astronomy and astrophysics, they're gone for a long time. You don't even know what to do with those things. And then remaining physical sciences, archaeology, hydrology, biology, anything with analogy has to be rebuilt. The libraries would have to be emptied and refilled, and that's just the academic side. Economically, you'd have to shut down all the stock markets for months until you figure out what was going on. But the biggest one's religion. Believe it or not, you're giving the 5 major religious houses of this world, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, all leverage against science simultaneously, and you're telling them to show restraint. And that's a short Illuminati meeting, right?
Wow.
So it's like, oh, what could go wrong? And then somebody stands up and lists those things off, right? And the guy at the end of the table, usually smoking, he's like, yeah, so we're not telling anybody until we can figure out what to do with it. And I don't blame them. The public was not ready for this in 1960. You did not have enough control of the information. Now, here we are in 2023. You've got 6 billion smartphones, high-speed internet, social media. I mean, you could push a narrative out anywhere in the world almost instantaneously. Within minutes, you can spin just about any story you want, which is why I think it's getting out there. It's being allowed to go out. They could have stunted us so many times when we started doing this. So there you go. It's not what they have to gain; it's what they have to lose. And in the future, it's like, can we turn this into our advantage one day? Yeah, maybe. So, but again, there's nothing gained by telling the public in 1960. Nothing. Absolutely. In fact, you have the chance to lose it all if you tell them in 1960. So hold on to that information, and then maybe it's like, maybe we'll figure it out eventually. Here we are, decades later. There you go.
So, Mark, I just like following up on that question because that's something I'm very intrigued about. It was one that the first thing that I thought about because, you were talking about conspiracies earlier. When we look at most conspiracies, we can pretty much see a direct line. You look at 9/11 conspiracies, who would benefit by staging, 9/11? Well, you can form a very direct line to a whole lot of stuff that happened. And we can see instantly, who it is to benefit. So, when it comes to this, I think I know like my question, my curiosity is to a point, people thought for most of humanity that the world was flat.
Right.
So then we go to the earth being around or a sphere.
Yep.
And I understand what you're saying about holding things back, but wouldn't that be something that's really easy to flip into pretty much the greatest scientific achievement of the 20th century?
Yes and no. I also believe, and that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Then anyone could go into Google and type in ancient cosmology and click on the image button, and you'll notice that just about every culture that ever was drew the same thing, right? Everybody drew a snow globe, and everybody knew this. However, that was a long time ago. We're pushing 600 years, 1,000 years. Most people couldn't even read and write back then, but they all had the philosophers of the day. They all had the same concept. At some point, 500 years ago, they decided to change that. And I think it was partially because they wanted to control the information, the people. So you hold on to it because you're afraid. Meaning, back then, you turn it into the globe and get rid of the fence. And if you listen to my clues, I talked about this, where people are really great unless they find a barrier in front of them. Right? They find a fence, which is the analogy I give is the wildlife preserve. Right? You can put a couple buffalo in a 1,000-acre wildlife preserve, and they don't care about the fence. They're just gonna be walking around. They're fine. They'll be happy as clam. You can put a dozen people in that same 1,000 acres. All they're gonna care about is the fence. Because human beings, they don't like being constrained. It's like, why is the fence there? Who built the fence? What's on the other side of the fence? Have we angered the fence and the gods that that control the fence? Maybe we should sacrifice some things. Hey, get those buffalo over here. We're gonna kill them. So, because what happens is eventually, technology wise, because remember, we didn't even have good exploration tools really until the 1900s. And by that I mean until the internal combustion engine was created. What did you have? You had steam powered ships, you had some trains, but that was basically it. So I think the concern was, once exploration became cheap for the average person, there was going to be, and if the old stories were true, a lot of people would be like, hey, what about that fence I kept hearing about that my grandfather told me about a long time ago? And then you've got people that are just going to be heading for the fence. So what's the best way to get rid of it? Well, you just tell people there is no fence. Oh, no, you're living on a globe. Fence. That's just a myth. We don't care about the fence anymore. So you hide it as best you can, and then now, but let's put it this way: when you turned it into a globe, you still didn't know for sure, right? You had to make up a story, but you still didn't know for sure, because even you didn't have the technology to discover it until about 1960, until you could actually go out there yourself and find out the outer marker, and then seal off Antarctica for all time. You didn't know. Does that kind of answer it for you?
Okay, I think I get where you're coming from. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
But I also do. I'm going to give credit to God on this one, because God allowed it to be turned into a globe. But he could have stopped it at any point. I think we, part of the reason we're here is to, for not necessarily God's amusement. I think God learns a lot through us, but is to act naturally, and you can't act naturally if you know where you are. Right? It's kind of like like when you're being filmed, right? People act completely differently when they don't think they're being recorded, right? And so all of a sudden the cameras are on, and people. It was the old joke, when people got like news cameras on them, they would just freak out. Everyone would be smiling. It's like, the camera on me, really? So the old biblical story I like to throw at people is the Tower of Babel. One of my favorite short stories, one of the shortest stories ever, but it's so powerful in that, from Genesis, the first civilization that was ever built was perfect. Too perfect, as a matter of fact. They were unified, they were focused, they were driven, but worst of all, they knew where they were immediately. And it's like, which is why the Tower of Babel was going to be built. Again, Tower of Babel makes no sense on a globe, right? It's just this little needle.
Me and Sean were actually talking on that a couple months ago about the structure that was going to be built to the heavens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It makes
ancient
no
civilization.
sense unless you're building it in something like this.
Yeah,
And if you're building it inside a building, all you're trying to do is reach the ceiling. And it gets a great story. It's, of course, that's what you would do if you had the engineering technology, if you were that civilization. And the worst part, again, how the story goes is, God looks down. It's like, nuts. Well, we can't let this happen, because they're going to make it. And
you know
so it
what
was,
was what's interesting along with that line of thought
yeah,
is one of the more popular ideas in connection with the reason why flat earthers believe what they believe is because it all derives from a form of sun worship.
sure,
In connection with the sun being the center of our universe or our
right,
existence.
right.
I thought that was really really interesting, and how it kind of feeds along with I guess a narrative that is being pushed. What do you think about that?
That sun worship is tied to our community in general, or that sun worship, how it just happened naturally?
Yeah, basically how it happened naturally.
Well, I mean, think about this. For me, everything in the sky is just part of a giant, heavily ornamental clock that
Mhm.
predates language. That's all it is. I mean, before we could read and write the stars and everything, the stars and the planets and the sun and the moon, they showed us where to go. You know, when to plant crops, what time of the year it was, and so on and so on. Right.
Mhm.
And when I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, we're hardwired. The sun is the brightest thing in the sky. It brings warmth. It keeps you alive in certain situations. You know, before fire, it was your only real source of light. So sun worship was a very very natural thing. The Egyptians big on sun worship,
Yeah.
huge. I mean, of course, in that sort of climate, why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, for
You
sure.
had sun all the freaking time. So yeah, which is interesting. You think that you get more moon worship, but nope, it's really sun or nothing.
It's just the focus on the sun.
It is. It's really
Yeah.
just focused on the sun. I mean, yeah, so every once in a while you get something with Mars or Saturn or Jupiter and stuff like that. And then the constellations.
So
But
how
that
do flat earthers account for like daylight savings time and like the daylight cycle?
oh
Uh
well,
yeah.
if you're going to go along with that, we'll go with time zones as well. First off, the again, apologies for the people. You know what? I should probably back up a minute because the people who are listening, it's like, how does this work? How does this whole sun, how does the
Yeah.
whole system? Okay, so if you're living, and again, if you can't see the screen, if you're living in a building, right, with
Yeah.
walls and a floor and a ceiling, right, and there's some sort of dome above you, then the sun and the moon are inside here probably, and they're really high up, but they're very very small.
Mhm.
So, they're not, the sun isn't 93 million miles away and hundreds of thousands of miles wide. It's
Mhm.
really tiny. I mean, maybe 50 to 70 miles wide. I don't know, a couple thousand miles up, maybe give or take. We don't know. Not for sure. We don't
Mhm.
know everything. And the moon is basically the same. So the moon, it's not 2,000 miles wide. It's 57 miles, and it's up about the same. So it's really like a mobile above a child's crib. Very,
Mhm.
very tiny by comparison. By fact, by the way, so small that you couldn't even, if they were on this right here, you wouldn't even be able to see them if they weren't lit up.
Wow.
Meaning, which is one of our biggest problems when you type in flat Earth and you click on images in Google. One of the biggest problems is the sun is monstrous in it. I mean, it's thousands of miles wide inside. It's like, yeah, because we have to. The only way you could even see it on there is we have to draw it. We have to oversize it because from your standpoint, it would barely be even a pinhead. It would be the size of a pixel. So as far as daylight savings and the sun, traveling different paths across the sky like it is now, traveling a different path than it was in the summer, it's no different than a needle on a record player, right?
Wow.
So every time around, it takes a slightly different path.
Wow.
Does that answer the question? The biggest problem we have of the flat Earth, which I'm really surprised more people don't bring it up, is the 24-hour sun in the North Pole, which would be the center. That's easy. That's a piece of cake. 24 hours in Antarctica, not so easy. That's kind of tough to do without some sort of second light source.
Yeah.
So still working on that one.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, explain a little bit about the size of the sun and the moon.
Sure.
I think that's the one that a lot of people kind of get stumped on when it comes to the flat earther conversation.
Sure. Think about it like this. First off, notice the when it comes to astronomy, the real weird coincidences that most people they think about it a little bit, but they don't. It's tough for them to get their head around. First off, is let's look at the moon, which is again science just says, oh, it's just a coincidence. You only see one side of the moon, exactly one side of the moon. In fact, you think, because the moon's supposedly rotating too, right? No, it doesn't
Yeah.
rotate at all. It's completely locked in to the Earth rotation if you leave science. It doesn't even change a quarter of a degree in 100 years. That's that's unheard of.
Yeah.
That's really really weird. So, but the other thing is the biggest coincidence is that the moon is 40 times closer than the sun, but it's also 40 times more narrow than the sun. So
Oh wow.
it fits it when an eclipse happens, it fits exactly in front of the sun. It's like, wow, that is a coincidence. That's how
Yeah.
an eclipse happens, right? It's not like the moon is oversized and gets in front of. No, it's exactly the same size when perspective wise. That's what science says. For us, it's like, no, they're the same freaking size. That's how
Hmm.
it would be designed. It, So for me, the sun and the moon aren't that much of a mystery. I'll throw one more little thing for you, which is
Hmm.
the moon. If you look at the moon, the craters are all circles, right? Which means it's coming in straight down. It's coming in at a 90-degree angle. You know, straight down. It's like, wow, all of them came in at 90-degree angles. How does that happen? And none of the others. It's almost like the moon was decorated with
Wow.
craters. And I don't know if it was. I don't think it was lazy necessarily. I mean, I would never accuse God of being lazy,
Hmm.
but I'm saying that it might have been thrown out there as a breadcrumb, which is
Wow.
you'd think, well, if a big rock was heading towards the moon, that it would, the Earth's gravitational pull would skew the path of the asteroid or the meteor. Nope,
Yeah.
no, apparently not. But
Oh
anyway,
wow.
go ahead.
Sean, what were you about to say?
Oh, when I think about all that stuff, and again, I guess I'm the, I guess I get to be the devil's advocate today, which,
Sure, go
that's
ahead.
always
I
fun.
don't mind.
But one of the things, especially if the sun and the moon are positioned like that,
Yeah,
how do you account for how wildly inconsistent something like polar night is? Because the whole point of polar night is that, there's a 23-hour darkness, a 22-hour darkness,
right,
polar
right,
days
right,
being 22 or 23 hour.
right,
And from a rounder theory, it's pretty easy to tell because even though we have a consistent rotation and a
sure,
consistent back and forth on axis, at any time during the year, it's never exact.
sure,
And so the entirety of the explanation that seems plausible about the fact that polar nights, they do exist, is that inconsistency that comes from the Earth being a sphere. How would you account for that if the Earth is flat?
right,
Because if the sun's that close, the moon is that close, and the cycle is so much smaller than we would think,
right,
then to me at least it seems that, we wouldn't have polar night or polar day because it doesn't even happen every year. If
right.
there's enough tilt on the axis, it just doesn't happen in those same regions.
All right. When it comes to polar night, when you say polar night, I'm gonna guess that you were talking about the North Pole, which is fine. When it comes to the North Pole, polar night is easy. Again, if there's only one light source. When it comes to the Antarctic polar night or polar day, that part's tougher. If you're only using one light source, but to back up just a sec, everything up there, from our standpoint, everything up there is just a projection, nothing more. It's no different. And I don't know where the nearest. What city are you guys next to? You're in Los Angeles or in California?
Yeah, I'm in Seaside,
Okay.
California.
All right. So there I know there's some planetariums around you, and I know there's no reason to really go to a planetarium. But if you go to a planetarium, for example, once your eyes are adjusted and you're looking up up at the ceiling, everything in there, of course, is just an illusion. Does for example, on a really good planetarium, does the moon look spherical, for example? Yes, it does. Can you land on it? No. Why not? Well, because it's just lights on a ceiling. Same thing with Jupiter. I have people said, "Oh, I've seen the moons of Jupiter from my house," right? And I say, well, okay, fine, go to a planetarium, take a pair of binoculars. Can you see the moons of Jupiter from inside a
Mm,
planetarium? It's like, yeah, I can. Are they spherical? Oh, they look spherical. Yeah. Can you land on them? No. Why? Because they're just lights on the ceiling.
mm.
And one of the arguments I throw at people is, again, how human beings are easy. It's almost like we're just being designed to believe the illusion. In that, if you you guys know what Amish people are, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, wear all the black and they don't do any Western technology. They don't use power or
Hmm.
anything like that. If you took one of those guys, a pure Amish person, right, that's never seen modern technology, you blindfolded him and brought him to a planetarium, took off that blindfold, he'd freak out. He'd be like, what is happening? Why is it dark? Why is the moon moving so fast? And so on and so on. And that's just old school technology that we came up with. Imagine what you could do. Well, sorry, let me preface it with this. We had nothing to do with the building of this place, right? If you're living in a building with walls and a floor and a ceiling, we didn't build it. We don't know who did, although I suspect, yes, of course, you could say it's either a civilization much older than ourselves or God. But at that point, then you're kind of splitting hairs because, did God subcontract out the work, or did he build it personally? Not sure. So to answer your question, when it comes to the northern night, the polar night or the 24-hour day, Again, North Pole, piece of cake. We can do that all day long. That's easy to do on a flat world. The Antarctic side, not so easy, because there's got to be a second light source involved, or there's no 24-hour sun. But I've talked to enough people I trust, that say that there's a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. So if that's the case, all right, then there's a second light source somewhere. Remember, the whole
Wow.
place was designed to keep us from figuring it out. So it's pretty tricky.
Wow.
Yeah, now the only pushback I would have there is you can go way down south from the North Pole. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, still in the northern hemisphere, but you go to Norway, you know, parts of Russia, as far down as Alaska, and
Right.
you still have polar night. But what's interesting again, where that inconsistency in the Earth's rotation comes from is the fact that you don't have polar night for the vast majority of somewhere like Canada, which is higher in
Sure.
elevation, closer to the North Pole, but you do have it
I got you.
in Alaska. But again, that's something that science has accounted for because of the curvature of the Earth and the tilt on the axis.
I got
So
you.
those are the kind of things that that I think about when I think about it. That if we've accounted for it this way, how do
Right.
we account for that being
And
incorrect?
that is absolutely natural for you to do that. My days are spent answering questions that go along those lines, which is,
Mhm.
okay, I know that you believe the world is flat, but what about blank, and how does blank work?
Yeah.
Constantly, I get those. So again, you're still working through it. Hey, great. The fact that you're even asking questions is a happy thing for me. It's
For
good.
sure. For sure.
What's not happy, by the way, is I noticed you have are those the Star Wars trilogies behind you?
They are.
Did you
What?
just turn off your camera?
I didn't. I don't know what happened. Oh, we switched back to Daniel. Do I need to get
They
that
were
other shot of
No,
slicing?
no,
Hey,
no, no.
no,
It's fine.
absolutely
It's
not.
fine. I
We are huge
I
nerds. We
no, no,
love
no, no,
Star
no. I am
Wars.
no. Okay, no. First off, I am a huge nerd. I am a huge sci-fi
Yeah.
geek nerd. I could argue with you for an entire evening about who was the best Doctor Who, or what was the best Star Trek movie. But when it comes to Star Wars, it's the original trilogy for me. And then when Ryan Johnson did the Last Jedi, I stopped watching Star Wars. And because
Oh
of him,
Yeah,
because
man.
of that one man, I will not order Disney Plus. I will not do it. One
you
guy.
you won't get any disagreement from me. I
Huh?
mean, just
Oh my
just to
god.
be honest,
And I
of all
went
the things I
and I
can play
went
devil's advocate about today, that ain't it.
I went to all the prequels in the theater, the second three, and then the last three. Oh my god, it was just oh. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, keep going. What else you got?
What I really appreciate in connection with the community of flat earthers is that I think one of the greatest trademarks of scientists in general is the ability to question um, through scientific method
Yeah,
their reality. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? I think me and my wife, we had just watched a documentary on a guy who literally had made it his life goal to shoot his self-made rocket into space.
Oh,
To prove the yeah.
Mad. Wait, there's a document. Oh, right, the Mad Mike Hughes documentary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I knew that
yeah,
guy.
yeah. And
Yeah,
I oh, that's awesome. But yeah, we thought that was so cool. Like anybody that I feel that is using the scientific method, and that is actively challenging what we consider to be factual,
right.
in my opinion, is a scientist. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So, and I think that a lot of the people in the collegiate scientific world,
yeah,
they kind of push flat earthers away. And I'm like, you got this whole community of thinkers and challengers that are right there. And though they may not necessarily align with, what is popular in
yeah,
the scientific community, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
but you still got this community of people that are trying to find out, the truth. I think that's really,
It's
really cool.
it is cool. We everybody, you know, tries the scientific method numbers of times during their life without even
Yeah.
knowing it. Right? Test, observe, repeat. How many times do you guys do it when you're shooting? It happens all the time. It's like,
Yeah.
you run, you come up with an idea, you test it, you repeat it until your original idea is modified to it's like, oh, okay, well, this if I do this, this is going to happen.
Yeah.
When it comes to science, the pure scientific community, it is difficult for them because the foundation that everything that they were built on revolves around, no play on words there, the globe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is so many different scientific disciplines are built on the globe. So you challenging that and saying, yeah, so it's probably not a globe,
Yeah.
really upsets them, because they you're questioning for a lot of these people. In fact, I've said this many times. If you have a master's degree or higher in any almost anything, honestly, but physical
Sure.
science or higher, if you have a PhD in anything, you won't even listen to us. The
Yeah.
denial that kicks in will never go away. You
Yeah.
can't resolve it. It's like, because then it's like, how much money, how many years did I spend on school? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're going to tell me that it's not what I think it is. It
Yeah.
really kicks in that whole 5 stages of acceptance thing. And I
Yeah.
know a bunch of people that cannot get past denial,
Yeah.
which is, and when I find out who they are, it's like, oh yeah, you get your master's degree in blah blah blah. Oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
never coming.
We me and Sean, we talk a lot about like social manipulation and how I don't want to say like the cult mentality of society kind of blocks people's minds, and so like even if you were to show them the absolute truth, they still won't be able to to see it or
No,
accept it because
no,
like their mind's eyes like, no, this is not the reality of the
right.
effect.
Yeah,
So
you're absolutely right. Part of it's the Ash experiment, which I love so much, which is basically peer pressure.
Oh yeah,
mhm.
If you guys look it up, it's ASCH, which is peer pressure,
beautiful.
especially with social media nowadays. So powerful,
Yeah.
so incredibly powerful. And nobody wants to stick out. I mean, it's the stuff that when I was growing up in high school, the old stuff. It's like you want to be part of the cool kids. You want to be part of your peer group. You don't
Yeah.
want to color outside the lines. And I understand that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's become dangerous. If you guys ever, I don't know how many documentaries you watch. If you've never
Oh,
watched
lots.
Fake, have you watched Fake Famous?
Oh,
I've seen
maybe
that
I
one.
have. Oh,
Have you
you
seen
have?
Fake Famous?
I've seen
Where
that one.
they take 6 kids in Los Angeles to do a casting call, and they decide they're going to make them media famous without doing anything. Where basically
Oh man.
they do nothing. They
Oh
just buy
man.
clicks and hits and
Hmm.
stuff. And
Oh man, don't get started. Oh man, there's a couple Hollywood plants that drive me crazy right now.
yeah,
Bobby
it
Atloff, I'm talking to you.
is.
Oh Lord,
I'm
that's the one
definitely
thing that's
calling
gonna go
her out.
viral. Watch.
But it's powerful. The social media, but at the same time, social media has really worked in our favor. It's part of the speech I'm giving for the. You guys should go. By the way, you should go to the conference
For
next
sure.
month. It's in Vegas, October 21st and 22nd.
For
Um,
sure. For sure.
which is seriously, if you guys want media passes, I can contact me after the show. I
Yo,
think I can.
that's straight from Mark Sargent's mouth.
I can. I think I can hook you up. I'm pretty sure I can. But anyway, let me know afterwards. Seriously, if you guys, because
Yeah.
I think because you guys would just drive out there,
Yeah.
and I am a
Sure.
little nervous that we're doing this conference. This is the closest we've ever been to Los Angeles, which is, as you know, the highest concentration of social media in the world.
Oh yeah.
And
Everybody
I'm
out
a
here is
little,
social media influencers. Everybody.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I'm talking to you right now. It's how no, seriously, it's how it happened, which
Yeah.
was once I put these. What I did was when I made my flat Earth clues, I made them Creative Commons license. So I
Wow.
said, basically, anybody can take them. Do what you
Wow.
want. Copyright be damned. I'm never going to throw a strike at you. Have fun
Yeah.
with it. And next thing you know, people, which is why I'm again part of my speech, which I'm saying the click chasers, the new generation of click chasers, the kids that are coming up. You probably saw the stat out there, which is 1 out of every 3 American kids, their career, they want to be an influencer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like that. I mean, that's scary numbers. It's like, what?
Yeah.
How many millions of kids want to be social
Yeah.
influencers? So they're all going to take a freaking stab at it. The problem is when you're so young, you have no content. I mean, you
Yeah.
guys do tactical stuff. You got content. You
Yeah.
create stuff out of nothing. The kids have nothing to do. So what they're going to do, what they do is they're content reporters. They're reacting. How many reaction videos out there? So many reactions. So
Yeah.
kids react to flat Earth, and so whenever a new platform comes online, Flat Earth just is out there because we've got 8 years of content, and kids
Wow.
just just grab bits and pieces because nobody copyrights anything.
Wow.
So
Wow.
there you go.
Wow. Yeah, that's the movement in connection with like kids in connection. I think a lot of it is because of like platforms like TikTok in which you literally have to do nothing
Yeah.
to start trending. You know what I'm saying? You
Yeah.
do a trendy dance and you're getting thousands of views, whereas like a lot of your actual content creators who actually take the time, develop content,
Yeah.
and create a product. You know what I'm saying? A lot of those guys are, they're out there struggling.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
struggling.
and the kids want people are drawn to the easy fix, the
Mhm.
easy money, and not that TikTok pays a lot, but
Nah,
yeah,
nah.
you're absolutely right. It's like why do I have to create content when I could just lip sync to something and do a little twirly dance? And it's like, yeah, but if you and your friends and everybody you
Thousands,
know is doing
millions of
that,
views.
yeah, and every week there's more kids and more kids and more kids doing this.
Yeah,
There's going to be a burnout eventually
yeah.
because that you can't keep that sort of model up. TikTok, TikTok is it's
TikTok is interesting because I think I saw in a report maybe a year ago that it was saying because TikTok is it's a Chinese operation,
right,
and that China is a communist entity and its companies answer to the government of China.
right.
There's a major concern that the Chinese government is using TikTok as a means to target American children. What do you think that idea has any merit or if there's any truth to that?
Well, I'll play black hat for a second. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you, if that was the case, if you knew you had
Yeah,
that sort of influence? I mean, come on, if you're an exec at TikTok, if the government isn't already infiltrated, the same thing happens over here, which is the government goes into people forget, and I don't know what the age range of your listeners is. People forget that the internet was a military backbone system. That
operation.
it
Yeah,
started out, it's
that's
just a
true.
bulletin board system for the military in case everything went to hell, right?
That's true.
And then it's
ARPANET.
like, yeah, that's all
Yep.
it was. It was just like a serious, and it's like, wow, we created this backbone. Maybe we should give it to the civilians. And what do you
Yep.
think? They're not going to have access to absolutely everything along that backbone? Of course they are.
Yeah.
Same thing with TikTok. In fact, I am sure our government, there's this weird balancing act where our government is monitoring its data mining off of TikTok, right? But at the same time, they don't want China, the Chinese influence. They don't want China to, because from what I understand, TikTok in China is very, very different
Yeah.
than TikTok over
Yes.
here. They
Douyin.
don't they don't really tolerate the little twirly dances and the dumb things as much as we do. For us, the entertainment comes first, and
Yeah.
the first rule of media, which has never changed, which is give the people what they want.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the kids want. Anyway.
It flips like the sun, man. It flips.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah, and one of the things they play on too, I think that's a really big deal is that basically it's been tapped into that kids today, if you're under the age of 21, pretty much,
Yeah.
you have been raised as a dopamine addict.
Yeah.
So for a lot of these kids, it's not even, you think about how dangerous a substance dopamine is. I was reading a study that said, somebody over the age of, I think, 60 in their lifetime, if you measured the amount of dopamine their body secreted, it would be maybe a couple teaspoons.
Right.
Whereas today, it's closer to a cup over a
Yeah.
lifetime, which is an insane amount
Yeah.
of the same exact thing that's released when we gamble
Yeah.
or when we
Yeah.
drink or when we do all of these things. And, we give this to kids when they're 4 or 5 years old,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so kids are more addicted almost today to the attention than to the money.
Absolutely
Even
they
if
are.
you don't get paid, they get a dopamine hit because, like Danny
Oh,
was
I
saying,
got 1,000
they get,
views.
they get 1,000 views and they're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
people like me. And it's,
The money, from what I have seen, you're absolutely right. The money is secondary unless you reach a certain level, right? Once you, and you know who these guys
hmm
are, right? When you reach a certain level, then you are beholden. Then they start they start really watching the rules because they don't want to be demonetized. Demonetization is a
Right.
horrible word,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But before that point, it's all about the hits. Literally the hits where people, they get
Mm-hmm.
super thrilled. And as you know, the old stories is like, you can read 20 great comments in a row. You're wonderful. You're great. And then that one comment sticks out. It's like, you
Ruin him.
suck.
Yep.
You're really, you should just go into a barrel and die. And it's like, what? And you focus on that. And kids, the rap's right, under the age of 21, which would be young Gen Zers down.
Yeah.
I think the Gen Alphas now are 14.
Oh,
The
wow.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm getting old, which is, but yeah, they live or die off of it, which is, relationships are rise and fall off of it. Everything, their world. I mean, I remember, oh good Lord, 10, 15 years ago when this whole thing started, and I knew we were in trouble when I was sitting in a movie theater and the row in front of me was nothing but kids, couldn't have been 16, 17 years old. And they're all on their phones doing, click, click, click. Nobody was talking. And they were chatting with each other, even though
Mm-hmm.
they're right there. And I'm watching two of them, their elbows are touching, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to smack him on top of the head. It's like, he's right there. Just say something. Why are you
That kind of
texting
goes
him?
to
He's sitting
that
right
kind of
next to
goes to
you.
like what that kind of goes to what Elon Musk said a couple of years ago, that pretty much we're all already cyborgs.
Yeah.
We just don't know it because of the fact that, people today are so attached to their phone. Your entire life is in this piece of technology
Oh.
that is glued to you, that literally you can forget your wallet, your keys, you forget to put shoes on. You will not forget your phone.
Boy, that's a good point. And two things there. One, as much as I hate that man for a number of reasons, as much as I hate him because he is a corporate puppet that
Yeah.
he all he has to do is open his mouth and headline. They report literally every news organization.
Yeah.
If he says
Yeah.
anything, he once twittered a period, right? Just a period,
Went
and it was
viral. Went
yeah,
viral.
it went absolutely freaking viral. It's like, because people thought it was so deep and so mesmerizing. It's like, no, the man. Anyway, as much as I hate him, he is right about that. He's
Wow.
right about that. To where I went on a binge a couple months ago, where I was watching because I've been running out of things to watch. I absorbed so much media. I never got married or had kids, so I absorbed a ton of media, and I've been watching body cam vids, right? Mostly driving under the influence girls, right? They get pulled over. It's hilarious. If you guys have never spent an afternoon watching kids, girls that are between 19 and 28 being pulled over, it's hilarious because of your point, which is once they know the cuffs are going on, there's only one thing that's on their mind, which is, where's my phone? Where's my phone? Did you get my phone?
Wow.
And the cops, unfortunately, nowadays, because they know, it's like, yeah, we're going to put the phone in the car. In fact,
Wow.
one of them actually gave the phone to the girl while she was in the back seat. It's like, what are you doing?
Wow.
I think she was like a VIP or something like that.
Wow.
But that is their first thing. It's like, not call my family, not do this. It's like, not why I'm going to jail. Where's my phone? It's like, oh. So
Wow.
Red. So I'm Gen X. So this thing right here, this little phone, I hate it. I hate it so much, and and whenever I can, I go places without it just to
Wow.
prove a point. Because when
Wow.
people,
Mm-hmm.
say, it's like, I've been trying to text you. It's like, yeah, it sucks to be you because I don't have my phone with me.
Yo, Mark, question. This is something
Yeah.
that me and Sean has actually been going back and forth on. What do you think about the moon landing? Do you think the moon landing happened?
I'm gonna do a Greta on you. How dare you? How dare you bring that up? Okay, the moon landing was an absolute piece of crap production from minute freaking one, and they got away with it because we didn't know any better back then. I am old
Yeah.
enough to remember, well, barely remember the last mission, but
Yeah.
but I'll give you a couple quick things,
Yeah.
which is, there's all sorts of photos out there when it comes to the moon. But when I was doing overseas stuff before the pandemic, which is a whole other story for another day,
Mm-hmm.
when I was over there, I'd ask people, I'd say, I go, in America, I get it, right? Why do people in the United States believe in the moon landing? It's like, well, because we wave the flag,
Yep.
right? And we, it's a pride thing. Dana Perino on Fox News, I love quoting her. She goes, I believe in the moon landings because I'm a patriot. It's like,
Hey.
okay. Okay. The
Merc.
translation there is if you know what's good for you, if you live in the
Mm,
US, whatever the government tells you, that's what's true. It's like,
wow.
all right, that's totally
Yeah.
fine. I go, so why people, you in Sweden, why do you believe the Americans went to the moon? And whether it's Swedish or Australian or South African or what, they always say the same thing, which is, I believe the Americans went to the moon because it was on television. And
Hmm.
the American media would never lie about something like that. So
Yeah.
I go, oh God, are you serious?
Man,
I go, you guys
they
don't know
messed
us
up.
at all. I go, we're all about the entertainment value. There's a
Yeah.
Mark Twain quote, and I'll get into the details of why I don't like the moon landing. Mark Twain quote, which is, never let the truth get in the way of a good story,
Hmm.
which is so very true when it came to the moon landing, which is they got away with production value on the moon because people wanted things to be true, even though
Yeah.
the physics didn't match up.
Mm.
Meaning, I'll give you three quick examples. And again, I could send you a photo or two, but you can look them up all day long. Look like Apollo
Hmm.
12 shots. And I don't even care about the stars in the background. I do not
Hmm.
care, because it's like there's no stars in
There's
ever,
not
ever.
one star. Yeah, that's
There's
true.
not a single freaking star, and everybody says, "Oh, well, it's an exposure setting." Okay,
Yeah.
fine. It's a film camera. If you want to say exposure settings, I'll give you that one. Sure,
Hmm.
why not? Although, since you said it's an exposure setting, wouldn't you take one roll of film and change the exposure settings so you could see the stars? But whatever, doesn't really matter. Artemis supposedly went to the moon, and the Israel and India just supposedly went. Not a single star. Nobody. Digital cameras now. 2023. There are no stars in space.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one wants to talk about it, but whatever. People,
And
I
it's
still
crazy because like the value of our camera technology, like you could take your smartphone out there and just
oh yeah, yeah. I go, look, there's tons of stars in
high def,
space. We can
high
see them
def.
from here, but apparently the best cameras in the world can't see stars in space even now. And people will still throw me as well as exposure settings. Going, dude, there's no film in the cameras anymore. It's all
Wow.
digital. We've got
Yeah.
better cameras they're better than our own eyes. So
Yeah.
don't give me that crap. Anyway, so forget about that. Three quick ones. One is, if you notice any of the shots, the shadows go in multiple directions. And if it's one light source, from the sun, supposedly 93 million miles away, then all the shadows will go in one direction, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, well, no, they're going in multiple directions because you're in a freaking studio.
Wow.
That's all there is. There's no blast crater underneath the lander, even though it's
Hmm.
10,000 pounds of thrust. This thing should
True.
have burned. By the way, I always thought it was really interesting that there's an even 4 inches of ash across the
Hmm.
entire moon, and nobody bothered to take a shovel and dig and see how deep the ash was. They just knew that it only went down 4 inches. It's like, where is there rock underneath there? Were you? Can you? Anyone? Nobody dug a hole. Nobody dug a hole. Well, while they were doing the moon stuff. But the biggest thing for me, the thing that I put a challenge out there for, was the spacesuits.
Yeah.
That's the part that bugged me. Not even feats of strength, by the way. Oh, feats of strength. Let's throw that in really fast. Which is, remember, the moon's supposedly 1/6 Earth's gravity, right? So 180
Hmm.
pound man weighs 30 pounds.
Hmm.
Do you know what sort of vertical leap you could have if you right now, if you were 1/6 your weight? And it's like, I don't care if what the movie said about white men can't jump. They should be able to jump somewhat, right? They should be able to jump straight up. And for 30 pounds, these guys are athletic. They should be able to do it. They should be dunking
Yeah.
like crazy. But
Yeah.
no, there's nothing. No, the big thing for me was the spacesuit, which is, if you know anything, you can look this up on any platform, YouTube, whatever, which is anything in a vacuum chamber, right? If you take,
Mhm.
because what we're breathing in here is nitrogen and oxygen. We just can't see it, right? But
Yeah.
if you take it out, then the pressure has to go somewhere. So if you put anything in a vacuum chamber, I don't care if it's a soccer ball or a football or a can of soda, it just detonates because the pressure
Yeah.
has to get out, right? There's only one thing ever that doesn't act that way, and that's the spacesuit for
Mm.
NASA. It's like, what do you mean? A spacesuit, if you put that in a vacuum chamber, should turn immediately into a parade float, right? It should just
Mhm.
expand, and the guy should just tip over and it should burst and he should die. And in fact, at the very least, right? He shouldn't be able to bend his arms. He should have no finger manipulation, right?
Yeah.
And they're hooking up all sorts of fun electronics outside.
Yeah. They're and
But
like if you look at the video, they're just like jumping around, falling over. I'm like, y'all
Oh.
aren't worried to rip your suit? You rip your suit, you're done.
let me please, thank you, by the way. You're one of the few people that has ever brought that up, and it just drives me insane, which is you're on the freaking moon and you're acting like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Right? I get that, that airline pilots, they're trained to talk about, we're cruising at 30,000 feet and blah, blah, blah. No, if you're at the moon, the only thing you care. Oh, one more thing? By the way, any of you trolls that might be listening, figure out this one for me. I've listened to all the audio from all the ground crews that were on the moon, right? Do you know what they never ever talked about?
What?
How much air they had left. Never brought it up. I have known a whole bunch of scuba divers, and the scuba divers I go, what's the one thing all scuba divers do? They go, we check our air constantly. We're obsessive about it, right? There's a big air dial that you hold in front of you, and it's like all you care about is how much air. It's like, we got 8 minutes of air left. We better start heading up. None of these guys cared. They had unlimited air. It's like, you think how far they were away from that capsule? It's like, hey, Frank, we have like 14 minutes of air left. Maybe we should start heading back. Nobody talked about it. No, get out the golf clubs. Start hit some shots. Fall in rock. And you're to your point. If you fall in a sharp rock and you puncture a hole in your suit, you're done. You're done. You're absolutely freaking done. There is nothing they could do to help you. But the last thing they were ever going to do, which was, again, one of the reasons why even if the moon was real, why you'd never send a person up there, it's because you don't want to turn the moon into a freaking headstone. You just don't, because then anytime it'd be depressing. And when anyone looked up there, it'd be like, those poor people, right? like a whole mission crashes.
And who's going to go get them?
Yeah, right. There'd be this memorial. It's like, oh, those poor Americans. Right?
They're just going to be on the moon. It'll cost like, what, $1 billion to go get them? They just leave them.
Nobody's gonna go get them. It's like, leave no man behind. It's like, hell with that. It's $1 billion. Don't tell me you can't put a price on human life. You absolutely can. So yeah,
$1 billion. Yeah, they staying there. We'll probably have a day for them or something. R.I.P. Neil Armstrong.
And then they end the moon. So they do like 6 round trips. And then 1972, they do this quick announcement. It's like, well, again, they're telling you, right? So they're like, well, the public really doesn't care anymore. Right? It's like, no one's watching our moon footage. That's it. Good night, everybody. Roll credits. And that's it. 1972, they just shut it down, and then nobody goes back. The Chinese don't go. And by the way, nobody wanted to talk about the space race. Remember, that was a space race between the Soviet Union and us. It was like, who's going to get there first? And then all of a sudden, the Americans get there, and the Russians just quit. They just shut it all down. That's never happened in the history of sports. Ever. The first guy that crossed the finish line, the rest of the guys,
for 60 years. Nobody even tried anymore.
Nobody even tried after
they
that.
Dropped the mic and they were like, that's it, we're done. And the whole world was like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah. And it was brilliant. In fact, and the propaganda over the years, I even asked this one girl, she was Irish, and I go, you could tell she was a heavy science girl. Yeah. And she was a big girl to boot. But she goes, I go, what I go, so they haven't gone back in a long time, 60 something years. I go, when are they going? She goes, we're going soon. I was like, and so that look in her eye, this glazed over, like, yeah, you're drinking the Kool-Aid. You absolutely believe that they're going to keep this going. So yeah. But Neil Tyson, he even got some pushback from some of his young physics students, these girls, where they, he was talking about the moon missions, and the girls were like, yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it? He's going, what are you talking about? It still is. It's like, really? Because it's been a long time.
Wow.
Whatever.
Do you so what do you they're talking about going back to the moon
with Artemis.
Yeah, in a couple of years. What do you think about that?
Never ever gonna happen. Never gonna happen. No, seriously, they are hoping that the war kicks off here pretty soon. Because in fact, I don't even think Artemis 1 was supposed to launch. I think between the pandemic and the European theater,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was never supposed to get off. So when Artemis 1 launched, they smudged up the footage as great as possible, which was, I really loved that camera was supposedly 50 miles away from the moon, and it was absolutely some of the worst resolution I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And it never got any better. It's like, no, we're shooting better footage from here. You're point blank range away from that moon. So no. And then Artemis 2, you saw that was the biggest fireworks show ever for a rocket.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and yet they still had the crowd cheering. When the thing, it's like, what are you talking about? It blew up 4 minutes after liftoff. In fact, you're lucky it hasn't had at all. And you're treating it like, and they're saying, well, up, onward and upward. It's like, what are you talking about? You know how much money that cost?
Yeah.
You just blew that thing to hell. And the question is, was it even supposed to do anything, or did they screw up the guidance on purpose just to drag their feet? Because no one's even talking about the relaunch anytime soon. Sorry. Last thing before we move on to our next thing, which is, because I gotta get this out there about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Because I know that red team and blue team, team. I've even had my own family members say, "Oh, Elon Musk's a genius. He's he's the new Tony Stark." And it's like,
yeah, that I think that's the most common thing with Elon Musk right now, is that they want to compare him to Iron Man.
Oh,
everybody want to compare him to Iron Man.
He is a freaking puppet. And in fact, I will send you. Hang on, I will send you a shot here really quick.
Yeah.
1 second. I'll send you a shot I send to people about Elon. It's like, no, he's just a stupid software guy that was groomed into the where is this? He was groomed into this thing that he is now. And there was a wonderful New York Post article that came out years ago, which said that Elon Musk is a total fraud. And I stood up and I stood and applauded. So by the way, when we look at this shot, you'll understand what I'm talking about here. I'm his age, and I knew software guys like this all day long. You can't tell me that this guy here in the photo that couldn't even scrounge up, I think, $40 million back then, is now, quote unquote, the richest man to ever walk the earth. Now, first off, it's like, okay, but that's there's publicly rich, and then there's privately rich, right?
Yeah.
The publicly rich people are the people you see in the news. The privately rich, those are probably European families that do not care about money, because money is irrelevant to them.
Yeah.
Meaning they don't even count the digits, because who the hell cares?
Yeah.
But real quick, they were talking about all the stuff because all he does is says he's going to do something, and then people get stuck in their head, and then later it's like, oh yeah, he did that, didn't he? It's like, no. It's like, no, he said, oh, I'm going to create a super plane from the United States to China in like 2 hours. I'm going to do the underground bullet train from where you are to San Francisco, right? That was supposed to be a thing. I'm going to save those kids with my super submarine that were in that cave. I'm going to help out Puerto Rico after the hurricane with my special generators. He did none of those things. None of those things. And so, and even when it's like, yeah, but he bought, he owns, well, a couple of years from now, kids are going to be saying, yeah, but he started Twitter. It's like, no, he didn't. He was forced to buy it. He was forced to buy it because he said something dumb like, yeah, I think $50 a share is a great price. I would think about buying it. And it's like, no, that's legally binding nowadays if you're super, super rich. And his lawyers said, yeah, it's cheaper to actually buy it and destroy it.
Well, he's doing a great job at it.
And he didn't. Sorry, look, he didn't start Tesla Motors. All right. There was a Tesla dealership in Boulder, Colorado, where I lived for years before he came along and bought it. 4 years. There's 3 people that drive me nuts. It's like when they say, it's like, oh no, Elon started Tesla. No, he didn't. Mark Cuban founded the Dallas Mavericks. No, he did not. He bought the Dallas Mavericks. And Ray Kroc didn't start McDonald's. It was the McDonald's brothers that started McDonald's. The movie, if you haven't watched it, I know I'm rambling. If you haven't watched watch The Founder with Michael Keaton. If you've never seen
it.
Great movie. It's a great movie. Which was, people understand that the only reason McDonald's exists today is because his lawyer, Ray Kroc's lawyer, came up with the idea. It's like, yeah, all you have to do is blackmail the franchise people. All you do is they don't own the land. That's all you do. You say, you give them the lease, they can do whatever they want, but if they don't follow your instructions exactly, you pull the lease because you own the land. And he goes, you're not in the food business, you're in the real estate business. And that's how McDonald's, they're one of I think the biggest private holder of real estate in the world. People don't get it.
Sure.
Yep.
Wow.
Buy the freaking fries. Anyway,
Wow.
go ahead.
Wow.
Okay, I've got one more flat Earth question that I've been super curious about to
Fire.
hear from somebody that actually knows. Okay, so I spent years in the food business and really got into molecular gastronomy. So one thing that I've always noticed, whether it's bubbles, whether it's like spherifications that we would do, everything is round, everything is spherical. And when you
Yep.
look at how surface tension works, surface tension is said to mimic mimic the outside force of whatever, gravitational force, of course, being the Earth that is
Yep.
there. So, from your standpoint, why is it that surface tension always 100% of the time shows itself to be spherical and never flat like the Earth or snow globe like? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, it does. And I don't know if anyone's ever gold star for asking a question I don't think I've ever gotten. Don't know. I don't know the answer to that one. Why it is that way. I'd respond with why is a nickel bigger than a dime? I have no freaking idea. It shouldn't be, but it is. Um, the Let me address the gravity side of it, which is every scientist in the world will tell you that they don't know exactly what gravity is, right? It's still a theory, but it's a very consistent theory, very persistent, which is they can't tell you what gravity is, they can only tell you what it does. That it's a magical molecular force that pulls things straight down. When it comes to surface tension, yes, surface tension, I would imagine. I mean, surface tension, if you take a drop of water and you put it on your table right now, yeah, it looks like a dome, right? And then
Right.
if you spend it in air, which is by the way how they make buckshot. You probably
Oh
I
wow.
actually got a chance to install software at the Remington Ammunition Factory in Blytheville, Arkansas,
Oh wow.
and they were showing me this old school way of how they made buckshot, which is they take molten lead and they just drop it from a high altitude, like several hundred feet up, and when it
Yeah.
falls, it turns into a sphere, and when it lands, it's cooled.
Wow.
And it's like, but
Oh
yeah,
wow.
surface tension when
Wow.
you go all the way around, yeah, it would be a sphere because you'd surface tension in 360 degrees on all access points. So yeah, sure. But why does that make it easier to believe in the globe? I guess, but only because you're comparing spheres to spheres at
Mm.
that stage. You're saying, well, if a drop of water that is falling, if it's, well, again, provided it's not big enough, because remember the
Yeah.
surface tension only goes so far. You
Mm-hmm.
take a gallon of
Right.
water and you pour it, it's not going to be a sphere going on the way down. And since we can't replicate it in a lab, I know there are some people that even if you're doing, and I don't know if they've ever tried this with any large amount of water. You know what the vomit comet is? The
What?
plane.
Hmm.
So you haul out the plane and then you nosedive and it simulates no gravity. And by simulate, I mean it's a rough simulation, really, because you're just falling without wind. I'd love to see like 3 gallons of water, but I don't know if you poured 3 gallons of water into that, would it eventually turn into a sphere? Maybe. I don't know.
Hmm.
Well, it
Anyway,
wouldn't be together necessarily because there's a if you pour it out of if you even if you've got no wind resistance, still if gravity's going to act on it and there's going to be a
right,
secondary force pushing on it. So
right,
all surface tension is there's no other secondary force and something gets pushed into its smallest possible combination, its smallest
right,
possible size.
right,
So I don't know, but that's just one that I've always been super curious about because I know on the other hand, the common scientific explanation is that, when we look at pretty much anything in the world that isn't created through, a process of erosion or any kind of outside force, it all
right,
comes out rounded. And it
right.
does that because we live on a round earth, we live on a spherical earth. So gravity
Well,
itself
I
will
mean,
always mimic spherical, will mimic the sphere of the earth itself.
you can't. Yeah, again, you're reaching there because I mean, yes, you could say you can't necessarily say that it's happening because it's on spherical Earth. You can say that it's happening because of some sort of gravitational force, but can that same sort of gravitational force exist on some sort of flat Earth like this? Sure.
Hmm.
Why the heck not? I mean, I just say that it's a magical molecular force that pulls things down.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's not for me. It's not that much different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Until we can create anti-gravity in a lab, it's the argument's not going to go really one way or the other. But I get you.
Yeah.
I get what
Yeah.
you're saying. That's good. I like it. By the
Yeah,
way,
that's one
original.
I've always been really curious about.
That's good. Seriously, I am impressed. You've got stuff that I have not heard. That's good stuff.
Oh wow.
Hey, y'all hear it from
Hey, I'll take
Carolina
it.
Ballistics and the Dan and
No, no,
Dave Show.
I have not.
We
I have
got
done it.
Mark Sargent. Hey.
Seriously, I have done this I've done a lot of these things, and I have not
Yeah.
heard that you've got more than one. That's good.
Wow.
That's good.
That's
Which also
awesome.
means,
Oh,
by the way,
good, good.
that you've been thinking about a lot of stuff
Oh
along
Yeah.
those
yeah,
lines.
Yeah.
yeah.
We
I mean, I personally, I stay open to being wrong.
Let me throw one more out you, because I know our community loves bringing up density,
mm-hmm.
which is in addition in addition to something like some sort of gravitational. Whoop! Don't want to drop this. And some sort of gravitational force, there would also be density, which means that heavier things. You guys have seen the beakers where you put a thin liquid and a heavier liquid and heavy.
Hmm.
It'll separate naturally based on
Yeah.
the density of it. And if there is air pressure, again, if there's some sort of dome, then air
Yeah.
pressure actually means something. The term. So does that also mean that density plays into it? I believe so, because again, if you take hydrogen or helium or whatever, something that's lighter than air, right, less dense, it's going to go up. The other thing, and I know people like throwing this out there, we'll see if it works with you, which is you take a beach ball or whatever it is, a soccer ball, and you put it underwater, right, and you let go of it. What happens? It pops up. Did it pop up because it was going against gravity, or was it because it was less dense than the water around it? It was less dense. I think that it's a combination of the two. I think they both play into it. So that's my take. Good stuff though. I like it.
That's a good explanation. I appreciate it.
Gives me something to think about.
Interesting. But yeah, it's we're a firearm organization that
Right.
we specialize in like home training and stuff like that, and even when it comes to I think I mentioned it to you a couple weeks ago when we talked about the Coriolis effect,
Right.
in connection with firing from north to south.
Right.
When you fire, especially over a far distance, the bullet has a tendency to sway to the right, just because we have to take in consideration that the earth is, we perceive the earth is moving. You know what I'm saying? So
Are we talking about Go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
so yeah, like when you fire around, the bullet will literally shift off to the right, especially when you're firing from north to south. What do flat earthers say in connection with that?
With that, I defer to every military guy, and again, I'm not knocking what you guys
Mhm.
think you see. However, there was something that did it come out this year? I think it was the record long distance shot
Yeah,
sniper shot with a modified 50
yeah.
cal, and it took a whole bunch of shots to hit the target, but I think it was 4 miles, 4 point something miles, and it was a lob shot, obviously,
Hmm.
because you're not going to get anything straight for
Yeah,
4 miles.
yeah.
But at no point did they have to take into account any sort of Coriolis effect.
Wow.
Um, but I've got a list. If you guys want to have some fun with it, and again,
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
knocking
yeah,
snipers and long distance shots,
yeah.
but the list that I have on my channel, and these guys came out a long time ago. Everyone from howitzers to tanks to missiles to subs to you
Hmm.
name it, they've all said the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we've heard about the curvature of the
Coriolis.
Earth
Yeah,
and the Coriolis effect, combination
yeah.
of the both. Because we never work them into firing solutions ever.
Wow.
It's just something that it's like they said, we've seen the tables. In
Hmm.
fact, some of the military guys have come out and said, it's like, look, do you know how much more difficult war would be if all of a sudden you had to break out a table that said, oh yeah, by the way, not only, we have to redirect our cannons.
Hmm.
Not only do you have to have, distance and windage and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but now you have to factor in what the Coriolis effect is depending on your location. Remember,
Yeah,
because the effect is supposedly different no matter where you are. So at the equator,
yeah.
it's 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But up here, it's well, in Los Angeles would be less than 700 miles an hour.
Wow.
Which so you'd really have to. So then you'd have to make the adjustments accordingly. And they go, well, yeah, we never do it.
Wow.
So again,
Interesting.
I trust your what you're saying, but at the same time, are you seeing it? Or are you wanting to see it? Or is it something else
Hey,
that's going
you
on
never
that we
know.
don't know of? But no, I mean, I'm gonna
We were just talking about that social programming, hey, who knows?
well, here I'll give you one. I'll give you one more really quick, which is
Mhm.
again, I'm not picking on you guys at all. I
Yeah,
respect. By the
you
way,
good.
I love the fact that you guys are doing tactical stuff, and who knows? Hopefully, you won't have to use it anytime soon. I'm looking at I'm looking at Wednesday.
Yeah.
The which is where the George Orwell thing, whereas
Mhm.
when you reinforce something enough times, people will believe it just because that's what they want to see. It's the
Yeah.
5 lights, 4 lights argument. And the one that I throw out there, and I know the trolls hate me for this,
Mhm.
which is they say, oh, I've seen the curvature from an airplane. I've seen the curvature from an airplane. I've seen the curvature. Really, have you? I go,
Mhm.
because Neil Tyson, who went on about the Red Bull jump, if you remember that from some years ago.
Yeah.
The Red Bull goes up there. It's like we're on the edge of space. And he was really angry about that because it's not the edge of space. It was 130,000 feet. And they showed this wide angle curvature. The camera was this wide angle curvature. It's like, oh, okay. So the whole world is
Mhm.
the size of Arizona. Totally makes sense. And he goes, it's dishonest. He goes, nobody can see the curvature at 130,000 feet. It's absolutely flat at 130,000 feet. And yet I still have people that email me and say, oh, no, I've seen the curvature. They've seen the curvature from planes and from balloons and from mountaintops.
Mhm.
And some people have said they've even seen it from like a hill. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, no, I've seen it, the side to side curvature. It's like, well, have you, or did you want to see it? There's the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. But yeah, wow,
Oh,
you
sorry,
gave
sorry,
us a whole
one
lot to
more
think
real
about.
quick. Look,
Go
you
ahead.
guys shoot, right? You guys shoot.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, one more thing I gotta throw out there. It's like, do you have any scopes that have that Coriolis knob on it?
I don't think there's a knob to compensate for the Coriolis effect.
Well, no, no. Look, dude, I'm a small arms nut,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, like when the Barretts came out. So when CNN does a thing, it's like, oh, when a sniper comes on CNN and says,
Mhm.
oh, I took a shot at a mile, and I had to count for the curvature of the Coriolis. I'm going, really? Did you now? Wait, tell me how you. Wait, anyway,
Mhm.
you're good. What else you got? Here.
Now, now I would just build out of curiosity from listening on that question.
Yes.
So outside of bullets, like I guess the biggest way that we usually see the Coriolis effect come about is, hurricanes, cyclones, stuff like that.
Sure.
And, especially as we see, a warm southern wind, getting caught toward the equatorial center of the earth. And because of the earth's rotation becoming a hurricane. So
Right.
what accounts for that as far as,
The opposite spin versus cyclone and a hurricane.
right.
Right. Don't know. I don't know that one at all. I mean, I'm just gonna pin that one on God because it's just part of the system. What I will throw in. So the question for the listeners is, because a lot of people probably don't know, that cyclones spin in a different direction than hurricanes spin.
Yes.
And clockwise versus counterclockwise. And I am trying to visualize hurricanes. Is hurricanes
Hurricanes are
clockwise?
clockwise.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and
Hurricanes are
cyclones
clockwise. You got it.
well, I had a 50-50 chance. So, but I want to add to that, which is we'll throw in something simple that people have heard over the years, which is toilets and sinks drain in the opposite direction. We've all heard how the Simpsons did an episode on it, where the toilets flush in the opposite direction, whether if you're in the southern hemisphere or not, and that's absolutely a myth. There's a wonderful video out there called from a big channel, science channel, of course, and he hates us, called Smarter Every Day. And I don't even know how many millions he's got up to now, but he wanted to know that test, and so he set up 2 wading pools, right? One in the southern hemisphere, one in the northern hemisphere, with a central drain. Built them absolutely identical with his friend, to where they left him sitting. There's no movement on the water at all, and when they pulled the plugs, right? I don't know if it was simultaneously, but it was pretty damn close. They drained so incredibly gradually in one way or the other that he's going, I don't know what people are talking about with this whole toilet where it's immediately flushing in the direction. It's just the way the jets are formed. That's it. So when you go into, if you want to have some fun, sorry, two follow-ups. One is, if you want to have some fun, go to the equator and go to the tourist traps where they literally, again, it's a great gimmick where you sit next, they have a line. They literally have an equator line, right? They have one side, it's like, look, the water spins this way. And you jump to the other side of the line, look, the water spins the other way. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
it is absolutely sleight of hand. It's like, you're talking about 6 feet. I go, 6 feet, you would not even, there wouldn't be a change, even if that was true. But to that point, one more real quick. Do I believe that, because you might bring this up, the star trails at the equator, that this part is true. I firmly believe it's true, even though I've never seen it myself, which is you could take a photo on the equator line of the star trails, right? And you will see the split. You will see the time lapse where they will go in one direction on one side of the line and one direction on the other side of the line. Could that be done on a spherical Earth? Yes. Could it be done on a simulation of a spherical Earth? Yes, it can. I come from the software world. We can do that all day long. So for me, again, the sky is just a projection. It is just part of the illusion. And if people that come back and they say, well, God doesn't have to do that. God created a whole solar system. I was like, yeah, but that's a lot of effort for just to do it. It's like, look, 99.9% people believe the illusion. That's what you go with. You don't have to build the whole damn universe. And I'm not trying to be blasphemous here. Carl Sagan, you remember him from years ago. There's a wonderful
Mhm.
line. I mean, he even knew at some point. He's going, he always thought the universe was confusing because he goes, man, it is so empty. Because it's an awful waste of space. And it always bothered him. And it's like, yeah, the flat earth changes all that. It's not a waste of space. Why wouldn't it be efficient? Anyway, there you go.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I know I hit a lot of different things there, but you kind of get where my head's at.
No, yeah, you're great, man. So like on the subject of
Yeah.
like nature and like our existence,
Yeah.
especially like when you look into like stethoscopes, how do flat earthers like explain why everything we look at inside the universe is circular? Like
You
you
mean
look
like
into
everything,
Go
like
ahead.
planets and
Yeah,
meteors and
yeah.
stuff like that? The all right. The easy answer, and I'm not trying to use this as a cop out, but
Nah, you good.
again, if you're creating the illusion that I believe that art imitates life, which is when we build planetariums, why don't we spend huge amounts of money and make models of Jupiter and Mars and Venus up there and create this massive, the buildings could be 8 times as large and we could do it all with mechanical
Mhm.
processes. It's like, why? Why? We can project it up there just as easy and for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
So but it is an old argument, which is, if all the other planets are spherical, why is why are we flat? It's like, no, you're looking at it the wrong way. What makes you think they're spherical? You're not there. Nobody's there.
Mhm.
Until, and it's an argument I used in one of my last interviews, which is, look, until you have your own spaceship, which we're never going to get,
Mhm.
that you don't know for sure. In fact, the challenge I've always put at people, which is, how do you know? Okay, two quick ones.
Mhm.
One is George Orwell, where he was walking around. He wasn't a flat earther. He was the guy that wrote 1984. And he goes, it was great. He wrote this in 1946. He goes, when you go on the street and you ask anyone how they know the world is a globe, they say, well, what are you talking about? We know. It's a given. It is known. It's like, really? How do you know? And he was talking about how people will believe science no matter what they tell them, because they just immediately assume it's like, oh, that guy in the lab coat is smarter than
Yeah.
you.
He's
What's
telling the
interesting
truth.
is,
Yeah.
how did everybody in the world know in 1946, 12 years before NASA was even founded, that the
Yeah.
world was a globe? There's no space program. How'd you know? And again, that's what frustrates people, is it's not, and once it dawns on you that it's not that you were told. And there's a big difference there. NASA, you don't know the world is a globe or anything that's shaped by the globe. You were told this. by a very small group, by the way, who is U.S. military. NASA's Department of Defense always has been. Yeah,
for
they
sure.
wear white uniforms, they don't carry guns, and they smile for the camera. That's
Mhm.
very nice, but they're still military. They were built on
Yeah.
the still burning embers of the Nazi V2 program.
Mhm.
Right? That's how the whole thing started. You bring Werner von Braun and some of the scientists over there, some of their old rockets, you start working on it.
That's true.
And then you you clean it up, make all the rockets white, everything's shiny and happy, and next thing you know, they're the face of science.
Yeah.
So for people to say, well, just because the planets look spherical doesn't make our place spherical. It just, again, it's part of the illusion. That's all it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, so this is one I've always had a question on. All right.
Yeah.
So how like you go to the beach, right?
Right.
And theoretically, when you're at the beach, you're at sea level, right?
Right.
How come we can't see clear across the beach onto the other
That's a
side
good
of the beach?
Yep. Okay. So the extrapolation of that question is
Mhm.
because people have asked me, it's okay, from California, why can't you see Japan? Why can't you see France from New York? And why can't you see Mount Everest from everywhere? Because remember, it's
Mhm.
the highest place on earth. So why can't you see it?
Mhm.
The reason is, unfortunately, is because of our eyesight, which
Mhm.
is what we're breathing in now, right, isn't nothing. It's 99.99% transparent. It's mostly nitrogen and a little bit of oxygen. It's 80-20. There's some trace gases, but I'm just going to round to
Mhm.
those. It's 80-20, 4-1. That gets thick. That you're basically breathing in a thin version of water.
Mhm.
Planes don't really fly; they're swimming. By the
Yeah.
way, which is a whole nother
Oh,
thing.
wow.
It's weird when you think about it, but it's true. Which is a
Man.
whole nother thing. Which is so we'll come back to the plane thing in a second. Which is it compounds over time. So when you're looking off into the distance, that 99.9% transparency becomes 80, becomes 70, becomes 60. It's just a thin version of water. It's the
Mhm.
same reason why if you're scuba diving, why if you're down even 200 feet in the high noon, that you cannot
Mhm.
see the sun, right?
Mhm.
And if a whale is only, I don't know, 300 feet away, you've seen this in all the scuba videos where it just disappears. It's got a perfectly
Mhm.
white belly and it just disappears. Why? Because you can't see through that much water.
Mhm.
But it brings up to something I've been working on recently, which is
Yeah.
planes, which is, think about this. Again, this isn't hard physics, right? When you're walking, your feet are pushing off against the ground. When you're swimming, your arms are swimming against the water. And planes, their propeller is pushing against the air, right? But when you're in a rocket and you're in the vacuum of space, what are you pushing off against?
Mhm.
There's nothing to push off against. Meaning there's no medium. There's nothing there to push. There's not even fog to push off against. When I say a plane is swimming, it's literally swimming. A plane propeller is very similar to a boat propeller, which is
Mhm.
why planes can only go up so far, because eventually it gets thinner and thinner and there's less and less to push off against. And eventually the planes, in fact, helicopters are even worse. Helicopters
Mhm.
can only go up so far. And then they're like, the propellers don't work anymore. Drones, same
Mhm.
sort of thing. Drones don't work in real high altitude and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So there you go.
Interesting.
Short version, the atmosphere. It's what, again, by the way, sorry, one more thing, which is the when it comes to vacuums, this is how easily they can fool you, right? A vacuum, if you take a room, right, like this room right here, room I'm in, I could just tell you, right, it's a vacuum. How are you going to know any different? A vacuum looks identical to what's around me right now. The difference is that you wouldn't be able to hear me because there's nothing, you could do a YouTube video, take a bell and you put it in a vacuum chamber. It doesn't make any sound. You take all the air out. The sound can't go anywhere because it has to travel through something. So when the astronauts say they're in a vacuum chamber, which by the way, you can hardly ever find any of those videos out anywhere, they can just say they're in a vacuum chamber, but they don't even like to fake it. It was one of those challenges that I put out there years ago. Oh my God, years ago. And I go, you want to know how to convince me that the space program is real? Loan me one of your spacesuits and put me in a vacuum chamber and pull the switch. Tell me how I don't die. And
Mhm.
and not only that, I can bring $4 worth of materials in with me and I can prove whether it's a vacuum chamber or not. And it's not like you can just put me in a thing. It's like, well, you're in a vacuum. Oh, no, no, no. First off, the bell won't make any noise.
Hmm.
Tap water boils at room temperature in a vacuum. And you take a balloon and put a single breath of air into it, and it'll just expand until it explodes in a vacuum. So sorry,
Wow.
I ramble.
That's That's a hell of a holy
challenge.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I would really was hoping somebody would do it. Now, the caveat to that was I would really hope a scientist would put his money where his mouth was and go in with me, right? You
Yeah.
know, we have his own spacesuit because I wouldn't really want to die alone.
Yeah.
But it's like, the reason why I bring that up is it's like, look, I go the spacesuit, right? The backpack of the spacesuit. I go, tell me what is in that backpack that stops the vacuum of space. I go,
Hmm.
tell me. I go, look, I'm a pretty clever problem solver. I can't even come up with a fictional way of making that work. And you guys are
Wow.
saying, oh no, we've had that technology since the 60s. It's like, no, no, you haven't. No, even now I can't even think of how you could do it. And you're telling me you did this during the analog years of the 60s? No.
Yeah. We
No.
there's this guy, and I'm sure you're familiar with who he is, Mark. He actually done a lot, especially as of recently when they decided to reveal to the American people that they have what's it called, unidentified flying objects and
Sure.
IUDs and all, and what is it? IUAs? What's it called? Unidentified they were coming over the flying over the ocean, right?
Sure.
In connection
Oh,
with
oh, the underwater
al-
UFOs. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. In connection with this whole alien I guess I don't want to call it a craze. But one of the big things that he mentioned was that a lot of the technology that we see today, um, they had 20 years ago. So like right now we have like smartphones, we have flat inch TVs and all this
Sure.
other technology. But
Military
that
gets it first. Sure.
yeah, yeah. But a lot of the technology that we have was already like experimented with and then used at some level at a military
Oh
operation.
yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yep. I
Um,
do.
what do you think about that? That the possibility of alien life forms, and what does that mean for like the flat Earth
Sure.
um, movement?
First off, do I believe in ships, unidentified objects? Yeah, I do. I believe in them all day long. Oh my god, I could spend so much time on this, but I'll give you the highlights. The greatest UFO sighting of all time wasn't Roswell. It was in 1899 Texas. You guys can look it up. There's a wonderful wiki page on it. It was the 1561 Nuremberg event,
Wow.
where two giant space armadas did battle over a clear blue sky in Nuremberg, Germany, and then the third
Wow.
faction came in and broke it up.
Whoa.
Um, I know. I personally got into it before I even got into flat Earth. I watched this one conspiracy video where a British guy at the end he's going, "You want to see some weird stuff, man? You gotta get some night vision binoculars. Start looking at the sky." And I was going, "Oh, that sounds like a wager. I'm totally doing that." So I did. I looked around and I found there's some really good stuff out that now for like $100 you can buy some decent
Hmm.
night vision. But I was buying like the $500 Russian version with
Hmm.
because you want something in 5 power or higher. And I remember watching the sky, and when you first look, you're like, "What the?" I mean, it's just crawling with stuff, absolutely freaking
Hmm.
crawling with stuff. And they're way, way up there, way up there. I mean, 100,000 plus feet. And you're thinking to yourself, "Wow, the sky is full of satellites, right?" And you're looking, it's like, "Oh, this is boring. This is satellites, right?" And then all of a sudden, you see a few of them just stop, right? They're flying along and then they slow down, they just stop. And it's like they're looking for directions or something. And then like
Hmm.
they'll hang a hard left or hard right and go ballistic. And
Yeah.
if you know anything about satellites, it's like and so so do I believe there's stuff up there? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I think they're from Mars or Venus or Jupiter? No.
You think
No, I
they're
do
from
not.
like past the ice wall? I
Possibly.
I really wanted to delve into the belief of life beyond the ice wall
Sure.
because I think that's like one of the most interesting aspects of like the whole flat Earth like I don't belief system is
Sure.
the idea that there's societies outside of of what we know as
Sure.
humanity. I think that's really cool.
And by the way, let's delve into that. But
Hmm.
before I do that, really quick, which is if you guys don't know how UFOs work, the common theory is, and I believe it, is they run off a completely different engine,
Hmm.
which is a unified field engine. The
Hmm.
mythical engine that Einstein supposedly knew and was never going to tell our military because he knew what you could do with it. It would make the atomic weapon program look like a freaking BB gun.
Wow.
Which is it's basically the old science fiction movies, which is a force field. So if you can create some sort of force field around your ship, you can bypass any sort of G-force, and therefore you could travel at unbelievable speeds, and not just on unbelievable speeds. You could ignore aerodynamics. You could travel in just about any direction, any acceleration level. You go from 0 to 5,000 miles an hour in a second if you want it. It's not going to affect you in the slightest.
Wow.
And because it's inside the force field, you're not going to hear anything, because the force field would also bounce back sound waves. So it could be really loud inside a UFO. You're never going to know, because the field itself is a big sound dampener.
Wow.
And on top of it, you can use it to travel underwater.
Wow. Oh wow.
Because
Yeah.
why
I think
wouldn't
I think I remember hearing about that.
why wouldn't now? You wouldn't be able to go as fast. Who knows? I don't know what the speed constraints are underwater for
Yeah.
various reasons. But I've heard stories of UFOs underwater that are going several hundred miles an hour,
Wow.
very, very fast. However, you would it's pretty risky down there, because you're hitting a lot of stuff potentially. I mean,
Wow.
you don't want to kill all the fish life if you can help it. Seriously, that'd be bad. I will send you, if I get a chance after, as soon as I'm done with this, I will
Yeah.
send you my favorite video of a UFO, and it does
That'd
not
be
get much
dope.
press. Is from Oak Bay, up just north of here in Canada, and I knew exactly what was happening. Whereas,
Yeah.
because they're flying around all the time,
Wow.
but here's the thing: they're cloaked most of the time, for obvious reasons, right? You
Mhm.
don't want to spook the population that's down here. I mean, you
Yeah.
get yourself in a whole bunch of trouble, because people say, well, why isn't a UFO landed in the middle of Indiana and just start? It's like, what, you're going to get out, start taking selfies and start signing autographs and shaking hands? No, you would screw up so much stuff. So it's part of the rules.
Yeah.
There's certain things you can't do. Which goes into, sorry, real quick, but I'll talk about that sighting in a sec, which
Mhm.
is people. I think that they're not from Mars or Jupiter or Venus. Could they be outside the ice wall? Yes, but they're older versions of us.
Wow.
Meaning they're just, I think every civilization gets to a certain point, and then they have to move on, like upperclassmen, right? You don't have to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here, because we got another class coming in.
Yeah.
But they're also not allowed to mess with the general population. Now, yes, you want to pick off a couple guys in a fishing boat, or some drunk campers, or something, somebody out on the fringe. I think that's
Yeah.
allowed, right? You
Yeah.
have so many a year. It's like a catch and release program, but
Mhm.
I think it's loosely monitored. But this one thing up in Oak Bay, I knew exactly what was happening. It was twilight, right? It's twilight on a crystal clear Canadian night, but the
Mhm.
sun had gone down, but you could still see things pretty well. But the sun had gone down, obviously, probably 30, 40 minutes earlier. And this ship that was flying, I don't know, barely even 1,000 feet, maybe, just starts just fooling around like a Sunday driver, just kind of coming over the bay. And the people in the sailboats, because people in Canada, they're just like sitting there drinking, and some of them are filming stuff, and like, what the hell is that thing, right? Absolutely whisper quiet, ugly ship. Oh my God, it was ugly. It was not an attractive car in the slightest.
Wow.
I mean, it looked like a Boba Fett ship.
Wow.
There's my Star Wars thing for you. Ready? There it is. There's my one Star Wars nugget. It looked like Boba Fett's ship. Seriously, you'll see when I send it to you. And but so do I think that that is one of the big questions, which is,
Yeah.
are there other civilizations that live outside of here, right?
Mhm.
Outside of this barrier, and
Mhm.
do they have access? I don't know. I could go either way, but I would like to think that whatever you see flying around in here, um, is basically in here with us. Now, could that mean that there's another dome outside of this dome, and there's certain access points where you're not allowed, like, we're not allowed to go past this. Again, we
Yeah.
tried to blow through this back in the late 50s and early 60s, with our biggest guns ever, and we couldn't do it. Us and the Soviet Union, both couldn't get through this thing. Now, do I think that ships potentially have access to come in and out? Sure, why not? I mean, it's,
Mhm.
again, as long as you follow, what's the Star Trek reference, the Prime Directive, where it's
Oh
like,
man,
do
don't tell me
not
you a
mess.
Star Trek fan too, man.
I am
Oh man,
a
you in the
Star Trek
right
fan.
group today.
Well, no, doesn't it make sense
Ah.
when the Star Trek movie? I know people didn't like the second movie as much,
Mhm.
but when they were down on that planet, it's like, we make sure the natives don't see the ship or don't see you, right? And as soon as they took off and the natives saw the Enterprise, it's like they completely burned down their old religion and they started drawing the Enterprise ship, and that's who they were going to worship to.
Wow.
That's what the Prime Directive is all about. You will influence the natural process. I mean, come on, if a giant golden spaceship landed in the beach of down in Huntington Beach somewhere, right? you'd have two schools of people that would show up. One would be all the science geeks, right? They'd be like, oh, see, they do look like the people from Avatar, right?
Yeah.
And the other people would be like, we must worship the blue people. Start building churches right now. Just tear down houses, start building churches, right? That's
And then you got
sort
that
of
third group of people that's trying to have sex with them.
yeah, the groupies. Yeah, the groupies.
All
Yeah.
right, Mark, yo, this has to happen again. This has been one of the most funnest interviews I think I've had in quite
glad.
some time. This has been
Glad.
great. Thank you so much, Mark. Brother Sean, thank you for coming through, helping us
Thank
out
you,
on this
Sean.
interview.
Thank you.
With
Again,
Good
I'm not
talking
gonna
to you.
hold. I'm not gonna hold it against you. The Star Wars thing in the background. I'm not gonna hold it against you.
It's okay. It's okay. They just all happen to be on there, but I'm with you. OT for life.
And thank you, and thank you, by the way, for coming up with good questions. Seriously,
Yeah.
it's not often that I get questions. It's like, wow, I haven't really thought about that. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Hey, we all in this
Awesome.
together. Hey, guys, if you made it this far, you are the real one. Thank you so much for checking us out. Peace, love, and blessings, guys.